To the extent that you can tell us, and I know there are certain things that you cannot tell us, when you see the war that's taking place with Ukraine and Russia, play out the dominoes for us. What are the permutations with which you think, as somebody who's actually involved in this behind the scenes, the various permutations it could take?
Well, it's a very hard question, but first of all, we at Palantir, I thought this would actually happen, and so that's already, it's interesting, one of the interesting things was the American intelligence organizations got it right that would happen. Many didn't, the Europeans didn't, although I think their general consensus of how long it would happen, the duration has been pretty wrong, just in general. I think this is going to be very hard to resolve. First of all, I think both sides believe that they have advantages and could win. So that's always in any negotiation. It's very hard when both sides believe they could and are winning.
Given that you I think, understand the technology that both sides have, are both sides right?
Well, the Russian advantage. So a different variation on this is why did the Russians? So clearly the Russians miscalculated in the beginning, and so the Russian view, I think, is we miscalculated in the beginning, but we're willing to spend lives in the way the West isn't. We care more, and therefore we'll win. And one shouldn't underestimate the Russian ability to fight. If you read history, they're very good at that. The miscalculation on the Russian side, I think, was, in my view, America spends $800 billion roughly on defense. They spend, I think, like $65 billion. Their view of us, I think, was, but our $65 billion is worth the American $350 billion because they misunderstood the amount of corruption in their system, and they viewed some of our spending as being wasteful. Where I think they just really miscalculated, again, slightly self-serving, is, but America, some of that spending went to things that are only being built in America, not just my products, but information systems, encryption technologies, targeting technologies, high-end hybrid hardware, software products that are, even if it's a small portion of the American spend, has a very, very high alpha. Just the same way, in fact, investment in great technologies in America doesn't explain the radical output of American companies compared to any other company. I think they very significantly underestimated the willpower of the Ukrainians. The Russian narrative is that it's not a real country. It turns out that I think that's where Zelensky's also played an enormous role, galvanizing it into a nation state. And then they underestimated greatly the effect of maybe 3-4% of a budget being spent on next generation things, as opposed to 100% or probably less of a budget being spent on this generation things. I believe a lot of what will happen will come down to the health of the president. Like I don't want to reduce, a lot of times, obviously you look at things from the prism of what you've done, and in tech, in general, you can reduce the company to the founding team. Doesn't mean a great founding team will win, but any idea will not work without a founding team that's creative and interesting and has business acumen. So I'm very indexed on him.
Which president are we talking about here?
The president of the Ukraine.
President of Ukraine.
Yeah.
His personal health.
Yeah, I would tend to look at this.
If he stays alive.
One of the things I'm not allowed to talk about is how many times they've tried to take him out, but it's not small. And when you meet him, the security around him, I've met, it's like if you're working with 60% of our revenues from governments, our product is used in almost every Western government in one form or another. So I like hanging out with my engineers, but I get rolled out to meet important people. I've never seen security like this. Like you meet the president of the United States, you go through a metal detector once or twice. Before I met with him, he talked to a number of our clandestine clients. I'm a relatively known figure. I only know that's because they kind of told me. And then everyone in the meeting, including his senior people, went through the same security I did, which is like you meet a president of any country, their advisors don't go through the metal detector too. So I think a lot comes down. I also think we've provided a lot of generous aid, but it is crucial what kind of aid arrives there, under what conditions, and how timely it is. And I think, and then America, you know, for better or worse, I'm fairly patriotic, understanding there are a lot of things to fix, but America just, I'll tell you another thing that's interesting that is not that surprised me. The American brand, British brand, and actually Israeli brand are the highest I've ever seen. Like the fact that our product at a general level is used in some of the countries I may have mentioned, that's what matters to to Eastern Europeans. If you go to any Eastern European country and you're selling a software product, they just want to know who uses it in those countries.